So can a single court case actually change a country's destiny? Well, you're about to hear about one that did just that. We're diving into the story of State versus Dosso, a case that literally legalized a military coup and honestly changed the course of Pakistan's history forever. All right, to get this, you gotta picture October 1958. Things just fell apart, and they fell apart fast. On October 7th, boom, the president, Iskandar Mirza, just decides to tear up the Constitution. Gone. That very same day, he imposes martial law across the whole country. And then, just 20 days later, General Ayub Khan shoves Mirza aside and grabs full power for himself. The whole system, the entire constitutional order, was just dismantled in less than a month. It's wild.
So you can imagine the chaos, right? This created this huge crisis, and it all boiled down to one massive question for the nation's highest court. When somebody just throws out the rulebook, who gets to write the new rules?
Okay, so let's dig into that moment of crisis, the day the Constitution was torn to shreds. And this takeover, it was swift and it was total. The national and provincial assemblies dissolved, gone. All the political parties banned. Just like that. A brand new legal order was just declared by decree, and General Ayub Khan was put in charge as the chief martial law administrator. You have to understand, this wasn't just some political shuffle. It was a complete and total legal black hole.
But here's the crazy part. The case that would end up defining this entire mess, it didn't start in the capital, not in the halls of power. Nope. It all started with one guy's unlikely fight for his own life.
And that's where we meet a man named Dosso. Now, Dosso wasn't a politician, he wasn't a general, he was just a guy from a tribal area who had been convicted of murder. And his very personal, very real legal battle, it was about to become the ultimate test for this brand new military regime. So the whole basis for Dosso's appeal is super important. He was arguing that this special law they used to convict him, it's called the Frontier Crimes Regulation, or FCR for short, was totally illegal. And why? Because he said it violated the fundamental rights that were guaranteed by the 1956 Constitution. Now here's the kicker. The timing of all this is everything. His appeal was already in the court system when, poof, the very Constitution he was basing his whole case on was just thrown out.
You can see how this put the Supreme Court in a really tough spot. An impossible position, really. So to try and solve this mess, they reached for a pretty radical, and as it turns out, a very dangerous legal theory.
Think about it. Here's the dilemma, right? The military takeover was, by its very definition, unconstitutional. So how on earth could the highest court in the land turn around and somehow declare it to be legal? It seems impossible.
Well, they found what they thought was an answer. It came from the work of an Austrian legal expert, a guy named Hans Kelsen. The idea is called the doctrine of revolution, sometimes just Kelsen's theory, and the core of it is kind of shocking in how simple it is. Basically, it argues that a successful revolution or coup can create its own brand new, totally valid legal system. So Kelsen's theory has these three conditions, like a checklist. Number one, the old legal order has to be successfully overthrown. Well, check. Number two, the new government has to establish effective control. Yep, check. And number three, the people have to pretty much conform to the new order. The court looked at Pakistan in late 1958 and said, yep, and yep. All three conditions are met.
The really controversial part of this whole theory is that it basically says law has nothing to do with morality, what's right or wrong. It's all about effectiveness. If a new power takes charge and can make people follow its rules, well, then its rules are the new law. It's basically the legal version of might makes right. The law just reflects who has the power instead of aiming for some higher ideal.
So, armed with this pretty dangerous new doctrine, the stage was set. The Supreme Court was about to deliver a judgment that would end up echoing for decades to come.
The man at the head of the court was Chief Justice Muhammad Munir, and his name was about to become forever tied to this incredibly controversial ruling. And the judgment, wow, it was stunning. The court officially declared that the military takeover was a successful revolution. What did that mean? Well, for one, the 1956 Constitution had ceased to exist. It was gone. The new martial law regime was now the one and only valid legal order. And this is the crucial part for Dosso and for every other person in the country. All those fundamental rights from the old Constitution, they were no longer enforceable. Let's be really clear about the impact here, because it was devastating. Before this judgment, you, as a citizen, had guaranteed rights. You could go to court to enforce them. After the Dosso judgment, poof, those rights were effectively suspended. They might still be written down somewhere, but you couldn't actually enforce them in a court of law.
They were toothless.
So what about Dosso, the man whose case started this whole thing? Remember, his entire appeal was built on a constitution that the Supreme Court had just declared dead and buried.
Well, his appeal was dismissed. Just like that. The reasoning was cold and simple. Since the 1956 Constitution didn't exist anymore, his argument that the FCR violated his rights under that Constitution was completely meaningless. A man's fight for his life just became a tiny footnote in the story of how a coup got legalized.
So let's talk about the legacy, the aftermath, because the story definitely did not end in 1958. This decision left a deep, deep scar on the country's legal and political soul. I mean, the fallout was just devastating. The Dosso judgment basically gave a legal stamp of approval to anyone who wanted to tear up the Constitution. It created a playbook, a how-to guide for future military takeovers. The message was loud and clear: if you succeed, we'll call you legal. It just completely undermined the whole idea of the rule of law, and it made the country's own judiciary look like it was just a rubber stamp for whoever had the most power.
But the story doesn't end there. History has a funny way of circling back. Fast forward 14 years to 1972. After another period of martial law, a brand new case landed in front of a new Supreme Court. And this was their chance. A chance to reconsider this whole dangerous doctrine.
And the reversal? It was absolute, a complete 180. Back in '58, in the Dosso case, the court used that doctrine of revolution to say martial law was okay. But now, in 1972, in a case called Asma Jalani, the court looked at that same doctrine and said no way. They explicitly rejected it and declared that martial law was in fact illegal.
This ruling was a total game changer. The court said that anyone who takes power by force is a usurper, and a usurper can never be a legitimate source of law. With that, the precedent set by State versus Dosso was officially, finally, and completely overruled. The legal excuse for military coups was tossed right into the dustbin of history. And all of this leaves us with this one big, profound question that this whole story is really about. What's the real job of a nation's highest court? Is it just to reflect the reality of power? To say, well, this guy has the guns, so he's in charge? Or is its job to defend the ideals of a constitution, even when, especially when, those ideals are being attacked? The story of Dosso really shows you just how incredibly high the stakes are when you have to answer that question.